Can everyone hear me loud and clear? If you could just use the chat box, which is on the bottom left of your screen, just to let me know if you can hear this loud and clear. Brilliant, thank you. All right, so my name is Harriet, and I work at Spacehive looking after all of our projects. So that means helping people who have an idea that they know they want to crowdfund for, actually turn those into crowdfunding projects, and to the point where they actually can go off with that cash and deliver their project. Now, you guys will be at different stages. Some of you might have an idea that you're looking to crowdfund. Some of you might already be midway throughout your campaign. This webinar we will hope to sort of tailor towards your needs, and if, for example, you have lots of questions, then we can use this more as a kind of question answer session, and if you simply want to learn some tips and tricks, as we have learned from our hundreds of project creators over the years, then that's what we can do. So I'd just like to ask by starting what you're hoping to achieve out of today's webinar. So if you could use the chat box and just let me know, is this something that you are looking to do in the future, or have you already got a project? Is there something in particular that you're really struggling with that you'd like us to tackle in this session? Perhaps you just are looking to find out some more information about crowdfunding more generally, how it came about. If you could just let me know. We are going to take you through several things today, but the more kind of tailored we can make it for your needs, the better it's going to be. So I'm going to get going, but if you come up with anything during the next sort of few minutes, you can just pop it in the chat box and leave any questions there as we go. So just to sort of start off, crowdfunding, it is quite a new concept in terms of using it to raise funds for projects online. The sort of initial crowdfunding platforms have been around for about sort of 7 years now. But the concept where it originates from is in public subscription, which has been around for hundreds of years. So statues around the UK, and even, as you can see featured on this slide, this is Lady Liberty over in New York. The base of the statue was actually funded through public subscription. So this is the concept that, if you have a large amount of money you need to raise, it's easy to tackle if everyone chips in a little fiver or tenner here and there. And so, one moment. So sorry about that. So it's a concept that's been around for a very long time, and with the rise of the internet, it's made things a lot simpler. So you can now, send a link round to all of your friends, and very quickly they can pay online in a safe environment. So Spacehive has been around for about 5 years. We are a platform specifically for projects that transform local places and make them better. So you might take like an old disused park that you want to transform into something completely new, or perhaps you want to build a new community centre, or perhaps you want to hold a community festival. Now, these kind of projects, because they happen in localised places, there's a different way to go about crowdfunding for them than for, let's say, an underwater watch or something, a gadget that perhaps people would use on Kickstarter, which is one of the biggest technology crowdfunding platforms. So we've got lots of tips for success. So Pam, don't worry about that. We will take you through sort of a few stages. So first of all, we're going to kind of just run through what your crowdfunding idea might be, and how to make that stand out more as a more successful idea. So it's kind of the pre-stage where you're thinking about your idea in that way. And then we'll kind of run through some tips on how to actually present your project page. So in terms of that front-facing web page that you'll be sending around to your friends and family, how do you make that look the best in order to attract those pledges from the crowd? And we'll be spending the most of our time actually focusing on the crowdfunding itself. So, what can you do on social media to make sure that you get a pledge, or how do you approach a business and persuade them that this is something that they should support. So we'll be going through most of that. And by the end of it, you should feel confident to run a successful crowdfunding campaign. Now, there are many, many reasons to run a crowdfunding campaign. Lots of people have, for years and years now, applied to grant applications. Nowadays, there's less and less money through grant bodies or even organisations, businesses that are offering support. Crowdfunding is a really good option to not only get funding where it no longer exists, but also to engage the crowd in the project itself, and it leads to loads of benefits. These are straight from the mouth of our project creators who are, they hit their target, they come back and they say, we're so glad we crowdfunded because it generated this sense of ownership. It meant that, when we actually launched the new play equipment in the park, lots of people came along and they, they didn't vandalize it, they didn't graffiti on it, they picked up their litter when they left. They feel like they helped make it happen, and therefore they're going to look after it more. They also feel like they build relationships. So you might feel like you're perhaps a well-connected person in your neighborhood, but this is really a way to kind of secure bonds in the local area and provide that new space for the community to socialize. You'll also find that you get done quicker. So the trick to a successful crowdfunding campaign, one of the many tricks, which can be really scary, is actually the shorter the campaign, the better. So, something like 4 weeks has a higher chance of success than a campaign that runs for, like, let's say 12 weeks. And this is because it creates this sense of urgency, this sense of excitement. And if you imagine that you're asking people, please give money, and if you're doing that over a period of 6 months, people are going to get bored. They're not going to see the need to kind of do it that night and make sure that they pledge that night. Whereas if you run it for a short period of time, people are like, oh gosh, if we don't do this, what's going to happen? And also lots of people find that it helps them to unlock bigger funds. So through running a crowdfunding campaign, if you then suddenly have 250 people that have pledged to your project, that is a community of 250 people. It's a public mandate. You can then go off to, let's say, Heritage Lottery Fund and say, there are this many people in the community that care about this project enough to give their own money towards it. And therefore, that's why, for example, your next grant application might have a greater chance of success. So you might see that is an added advantage. And raising profile. So obviously, if you're making a public campaign and you're talking about it in local press, on social media, the local news, it's going to raise the profile. And as an example, there was a local cinema recently that hit their crowdfunding target, and they end up having 5 times as many ticket sales since the success of their crowdfunding campaign. So it can have a really massive impact on actually the number of people that will use your project in the end. So if I haven't sold it to you enough already, I'm going to go on and tell you a little bit about how to actually refine your project idea, because not every idea is a good idea, or at least it won't come across as such to your community. So this is about taking your idea, and in your head it will seem like the best thing ever. But how do you make sure that that actually appeals to as many people as possible? Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't appeal to the wider crowd, then it's not going to attract them to give their money to it. So the question you've got to ask yourselves is, can you get the crowd to back you? So thinking about your idea, can you get the crowd to back that? So would your mum back your project? Would the local baker back your project? Would the children in the play area ask their parents to back the project? Would your local councillor back the project? Now go through and list off as many different types of people there are in your community, and ask yourself, would they want to actually give me money? Not would they think this is a good idea, but would they actually give me money towards this project? So the way to kind of help you organize this in your mind is we've come up with this thing of, yes, you can successfully crowdfund your idea if your idea has these elements in it. So is your idea clear cut? Now this is about, so I don't know if you've heard of the elevator pitch, but imagine you've got 30 seconds, you're in a lift, you're in an elevator with a complete stranger, and you've only got 30 seconds to tell them what your project idea is, and you've got to be able to persuade them to pledge to it there and then. So how are you going to say, how are you going to describe it? So on your project page, you need to make sure you're being incredibly clear what it is exactly you're raising money for, when it will be delivered, how it will be delivered, what added benefits will they get from it. So if you imagine you were on a website and you wanted to buy a new product, let's say it was like a new computer, you'd want to know exactly what the details of that computer was. So it would be, you'd be interested in finding out how big it was, how much it weighed, what model it was, when it, is it an old laptop or is it a new laptop? And then you'd want to find out when it would be delivered to you in the post. So when is it going to actually arrive to your house? So research has shown that people who pledge to civic crowdfunding projects, they pledge out of their consumerist pocket. So it's something that they feel they can get something out of themselves. So when someone's pledging to a project that is to improve a park, that's because they want to be able to go to that park and benefit from the new refurbished park themselves. It's not a charitable thing of, oh, this looks like a nice idea, I'll support it. So make sure your idea is really clear so that people know exactly what they're getting for their money, and that you don't kind of lose them in lots of fluffy words that don't actually say exactly what you're doing. The second thing is, does your project appeal broadly? So this is really key again, because in crowdfunding, let's say of the potential, let's say you've got 100 people that would potentially back your project. You have to imagine that only 10% of those will actually give you money. So the wider you make that potential number of backers, the better. So if your project only is going to benefit, let's say, dog walkers, so it's to put, let's say, in your park, you want to put some like doggy gym equipment or something like this, something for the dogs. That project is only going to benefit people in that local area who have dogs and who care about their dogs enough to kind of pay for this sort of thing. So it's a very niche audience. But if you suddenly include an element with some benches, so for people who like to go to the park to sit down, they might be dog walkers as well, but they might also want some more benches in the park. You suddenly open up a whole new audience. That could be old people, it could be anyone who lives around the park, regardless of whether they have a dog or not, anyone who's interested in having more benches in their park. So you increase the audience size. And then if you added in, let's say, a table tennis table for the young teenagers, you suddenly increase your audience even more. So the project should appeal as broadly as possible. The more refined you make it, the less likely you are to hit your target. And lastly, novel. So crowdfunding is, like I said, it's crowd psychology. So people want to be a part of something that they feel is novel, that has never been done before. So you want to imagine them saying to their friends, "Oh yeah, have you not heard about the Restore the Stairs project? Yeah, oh yeah, I pledged last week. It's, you need to get on this, jump on the bandwagon," and make them feel like they're part of an exclusive club. It's really important that your idea stands out. So your idea might not be particularly novel in of itself, but how do you describe it as such? So it might be that you want to do a market for your local town, open a new market. Well, is this the first market in 400 years that the town has seen? And is this market going to be, will it have some space for young people's stalls? Or will the market happen during the nighttime as opposed to on a Sunday morning? What is it about your project that is distinctive, special, and different that makes people say, wow, this is really different. I've never seen anything like that before. So if you can have that clear-cut element, if you can make your project appeal broadly, and if it is a novel idea, then yes, you can successfully crowdfund it. And an example of a project that did that really well, it was only for £5,000, but was the park slip and slide event. So it's a water slide down the high street in Bristol, one of the busiest streets. People could pledge. It's never been done before. So nowadays you see these kind of street slip and slide events happening quite a lot, but this was the first. It was done by an artist called Luke Jerram, and it was really novel, and that goes without saying. But it also had a broad appeal because local people who wanted to go down it would pledge. Also, local people who simply were proud of Bristol and they wanted this to be something that went ahead would pledge to it. All of the local businesses benefited from the footfall to the area that day, so they were all keen to pledge. And it's interesting to say that Red Bull actually wanted to fund this event fully themselves, be kind of like the corporate sponsors, but the artists had said no, this would be funded by the community, and that's why there was such a big turnout, because it was all over Facebook as a kind of a community project. It had nothing to do with big corporate sponsorship. It was very clear what they were doing. It was going to be on this day. There was going to be 100 spots for people to go down, and if you pledged, you'd be entered into a raffle. And that was how it was. It was very clear. This is what it's going to be. So when you are creating your project page, you know, before you even go onto Spacehive and you put it in the stuff, or even if you've done it already, have a little reflection on the idea itself and how that can be transformed into something that the crowd find irresistible to give money to. And it has to be that. It can't be that they think it's a good idea, but they find it irresistible to give their money to it. So once you've done that, and you start to kind of go into your actual project page itself, there are two sort of feelings that you want to evoke in your crowd. Now, these are really important. The first is wow, so that kind of plays on this idea of wow, this is a novel idea. And also this sense of trust, and that's to help people actually give money, because people often feel a bit uncomfortable giving money online. So I'm going to show you some titles of some projects, just to give you a feel for how you can evoke that sense of wow and trust. So over here we've got a title that's help, H-E-L-P. It's very hard to know what that is, so in a clear-cut way, no idea really what this project is about. If I were to click on a link, I probably wouldn't click on it, because I wouldn't, you know, it's not a particularly distinctive word. It just doesn't really say anything about the project. This project does have quite a fun title. So this was actually for a food festival in Penge, but you wouldn't know that unless you were from Penge, and you also would have to click on the project page to learn a little bit more. So you might want to add it on there, something like Pengelicious Food Festival. And over here you've got, you've got the York Arts Barge. It's very clear. It's a barge. It's in York, and it sounds like it might be some sort of like arts venue. The line. So this is, they've got their catchy short bit, but now they've got a little explanation on the end. So you could use either the long name or the short name. A sculpture walk for London. Then there's the Peckham Coal Line Urban Park. So you know that it's in Peckham, you know it's a park, and it sounds like it's a park on an old coal line. And we've got another one here, Transformed Shoreditch. So that's actually the name of the organisation. And they've kind of also added on additional information that it's a cafe and art space. So you know exactly what you're getting. It really helps to kind of give this sense of trust, and also, you know, just lead you on to read more because you know what you're getting. Then these are the images that the project creators have used on their page. So we've got some better ones over here on the left. They're quite eye-catching. They've put some text over the images to give you a little bit more information. We've got, some cute kids, the faces behind the project to really draw you in. Whereas these are basically just the logos. It doesn't really tell you much. They're not particularly good logos either. It doesn't really give you a sense of what the project will be like in the future, whereas these projects give you a kind of vision into what will happen with your money if you pledge. So it gives you this sense of like, wow, it's going to look like this in the end. And, they've done their research. They've got some really nice drawings that makes you feel a kind of greater sense of trust that it will be delivered. So then these are the introduction texts. So they come underneath, so you've got the title, you've got the project image, and then you've got the introduction text on your Spacehive page. So here are some that we find are less effective. So this one says, if we could not remember past events, we could not learn or develop language, relationships, nor personal identity. So this is clearly a quote. It's probably quite relevant to the project, but if this is the first thing that you read on the project page, you're going to be completely lost. You don't know if you want to read more. It doesn't even say what you're crowdfunding for. Very, very vague. This one says, help us bring rugby to everyone. So this is just bland. It doesn't say much at all. It does tell you what, broadly speaking, they're going to do, but it's not enough information to excite you or give you that sense of like, wow, this is amazing, and oh my gosh, they've really done their research. And then this one says, a space for Otley to find something different and try something new. So again, it's very vague. It kind of leaves you thinking, you know, what is this? It doesn't actually tell you what that new space is or who it's going to benefit. Whereas up here, you've got an almost perfect introduction. So it says, we are a group of local mums, local parents, galvanizing our community to replace our dilapidated and poorly designed playground into somewhere amazing to play. It talks about what it is and what it's going to. It talks about the people behind the project. And it really excites you. It makes you feel kind of, oh, wow, this is people power. We can do this. Another one, we want to temporarily transform Park Street in Bristol into a giant water slide for the public to enjoy. Help us make this ambitious and fun idea become a reality. So again, this is the one that we mentioned, the project that we mentioned earlier, the water slide. It's giving a strong call to action, you know, help us make this this ambitious idea a fun reality. So it really kind of makes you think, wow, I've got to read on and find out more. And this one says, from bingo to taekwondo, help us build a brand new multi-purpose community centre that creates an active hub for Glyncock. So these introductions, they really kind of capture the idea of the project there and then in just a sentence or two. They succinctly describe it, so they're very clear, you know exactly what you're getting, and they also generate a sense of excitement. So when you're creating your project pages, you really want to make sure that people feel this kind of element of, wow, this is incredible and really different. But you also want to make sure that they trust your project. So they want to see, for example, that you've done your research. They need to know if you've got the permissions, if you've checked with the council, if you've and also things like dates, you know, when is it going to launch and will people be invited along, all that sort of stuff. So that's the end of the sort of second part of this webinar where we're talking about refining your idea. So you've gone from refining your idea in your head and then also refining it on your project page and making sure it really draws people in to pledge. Now this next section is going to be all about planning your campaign and how to actually run that throughout that period and make sure that you get the pledges on. Before I go any further, I would just like to check if anyone's got any questions. So don't forget, there is a chat box on the left-hand corner. Feel free to write questions in there as we go, and we'll answer them whenever we get a moment. Brilliant. So now I've mentioned it a little bit before, but when you're running a crowdfunding campaign, the key to success is understanding crowd psychology. Now this is really, really crucial that you get this bit, so make sure you're all paying attention. So I want you to imagine that you're walking along your local high street, it's the evening and you're going out with some friends for some dinner. You haven't chosen a restaurant yet, so you're looking around, you know that this part of town has quite a few restaurants that you might go into, but you're trying to decide and make a mutual group decision. So the first restaurant you walk past, there's a few people in there. There's probably about 3 tables sat down and eating. It looks quite good, but then the next one you walk past is completely empty, but you have heard good things about this restaurant. All the same, there's absolutely no one in there. And then the third restaurant you walk past is thriving. In fact, there's even a small queue out the door. It looks like a really exciting, buzzy place, and it looks like the place, where everyone has chosen to eat that night. Of those 3 restaurants, which one, you could tell me using the chat box, which one are you going to go into? Are you going to go into the one that has a few people in it, the one that has no one in it, or are you going to go into the really busy one? So there's no right or wrong answer, but if you could just type your answer in the chat box, then we can move on to talk about how this works in the context of crowdfunding. So it looks like everyone's being a little bit shy today, which is okay. So Afrin says that the first instinct would be going to the empty one, which is interesting. I think, like I said, there's no right or wrong answer here. It could be that you are someone that would prefer to go into the empty restaurant, so you don't have to wait out the door. In the context of crowdfunding, it can really vary, but lots of campaigns we've noticed there's a sort of a time when most people would like to pledge to a project. Lots of people don't want to pledge when the campaign just begins, because they feel a lack of kind of like, oh, is this really going to take off? Do I want to be a part of this? So Joe says that psychology of marketing usually dictates people attracted to somewhere that is busy. That's it. Okay, and Afrin said, but then the full one could mean great quality. Exactly. So together, I think you've kind of nailed this. When you look at a busy restaurant, you've got this idea that all of those people have, decided together, which is almost a stronger force, a stronger decision power, that restaurant is the best, and therefore you might be more inclined to go to that restaurant. And Joe, that was a very interesting point. Joe says that nightclubs, bars, etc., hold doors and create queues for that purpose, which is really interesting. I didn't actually know that myself, but it makes complete sense. So when you're running a crowdfunding campaign, at Spacehive, we advise that you launch in ninja mode, and you actually do a sort of mini fake launch. So let's say that you're officially launching your campaign at 9 AM on Monday. You actually launch your campaign at 8:30 AM on Monday, and you have, let's say, 50 of your friends and family lined up. They all know that they have to. You've spoken to them all. They all know they have to do it, and you have kind of manipulated them to make sure that they pledge that half an hour early to actually get that number of pledges up, so that when you do your official launch, suddenly everyone who thought you were launching at 9, they're like, wow, they've got 50 pledges within the first hour. And it looks really impressive. And that's why you then choose to go and join that queue, if you like. So the Triangle in Bristol were famous for that. That's funny, I didn't know that, Jay. I'm actually from Bristol, so I wonder if other friends of mine were aware of that. But if you bear that in mind, when you're planning your campaign, you're trying to manipulate an environment whereby people want to be a part of that crowd. They want to go and tell their friends and family, oh, I know that this is the most kind of popular project to give to at the moment. It's trendy. They do it out of kind of social status as much as anything else. So bearing that in mind, when you are planning your campaign, you need to list all of your potential backers, and you want to rank them from those that are 100% likely to pledge to your campaign. That'll be yourself, for starters, and also people like your closest friends and family. So, I might call up my mum and be, Mum, you have to pledge a £5 to my project. Maybe your housemates, it could be your children, your grandparents, those that are closest to you, those that you know that you can ask to pledge, and they will do it straight away. And once you've got those, once you've exhausted all of your 100% likely to pledge people, you then move on to those that are kind of less strong acquaintances. They're maybe Facebook friends, but they're not your best friends, and you ask them to pledge. So those are people that like you, they don't necessarily love you, but because you've already got, let's say, 30 backers, these people will feel more trust, they'll feel more inclined to actually go on and become a part of that crowd. At which point, you know, once you've exhausted your actual personal contacts, you're going to move on to these kind of strangers, if you like. And you can find them in Facebook groups, you can find them through Twitter hashtags, you could find them through residents associations, tenants associations. But these are communities of people that, due to their interests, might be interested in your project. So let's say you're holding an art festival, you might find a Facebook group for art appreciators somewhere in that area. And these groups are really helpful. Some of our projects have even sworn by them as being the main reason for the success of their campaigns. Because if you imagine you've got about 3,000 members in some of these groups, if one person kind of shares something on that group and then 50 of the members in that group think that this is a great idea and they give it a like, that also gives people confidence to actually go on and pledge to the project. And once you've gone to all those kind of community networks, then you're in a really good position to actually go out to local businesses, because by this stage you've probably got at least 100 backers, and that's 100 people in the community that are, you know, committed to this project enough to give you money for it. And to the local press, to the local businesses, to councillors, that is a really strong case for them to not be able to ignore your request. If you only had 20 backers, they'd probably think, I mean, what's this going to affect? But especially for a local business, to get behind something that the local people want to happen, it's a great PR exercise for them. And for most of them, you know, £1,000 pledge won't make much of a dent in their business. So they'll be more than happy to help in whichever way they can. And after the local businesses, that's when you've got, you know, an example of why business would pledge to this kind of project, and you can go out to more national organisations. This could be big grant bodies, it could be the national press, it could be the actual local government, or the national government, people that are really very little at this stage to pledge to your project, but in the future, it could be quite a strong chance. So this is you, bang in the middle. You are 100% likely. Don't jump the gun. Don't go to the local press before you've got these 80% and 60% people. And likewise, don't focus your time on going to the national press or trying to get a celebrity endorsement until you've got that number of backers up, because that is really your key. And lots of people waste their time doing things in the wrong order, and it results in failure. So make sure you rank your backers and you then tick them off as you go. So we've got a question from Joe. He says, why not give a small extra thing like an invite to the launch as a VIP to the first 150 backers, inclusion and involvement? Also maybe a special thing for top 3 donations. Businesses like to compete to be the most generous. This is an excellent point. So on Spacehive, we are a donations-based platform. So for example, we don't have the rewards functionality that Kickstarter might have, where you can say for a £10 pledge you get this, for a £25 pledge you get this, for a £50 pledge you get this. And the reason for that is many. The first is that for our projects, the reward is the civic improvement itself. So that's really important for us, that actually you're getting this new park. That is what you're getting for your money. Rewards are actually a really good idea to incentivize people to pledge that a little bit more. So something like a ticket to the launch event is actually the best way to do it, because it also becomes a logistical nightmare having to send out you know, tote bags, postcards to all these different people who then might get in touch a year later and still claim that they never received it in the post. And this is just, you know, from people who have offered rewards in the past. They wish they'd never done it because it caused such a headache for years to come. Invites to the launch event, perhaps if you pledge £25, you get a free slice of pizza and a glass of wine. That's enough to get me to pledge 25 as opposed to a £5. So do think up little incentives like that, and also get businesses to compete with each other. So it could be that you come up with packages, let's say platinum, gold, silver, bronze packages, and the businesses there's a sort of a limited amount of, and they can sort of pledge against each other. So when you keep that crowd psychology in mind, we feel like there are kind of 4 key elements that you need to focus on when planning your campaign. So the first is events. So having an offline presence as much as an online presence. It's okay to kind of create excitement online, and that can keep ticking on quite nicely by itself. But to have an event halfway, we call it a pledge party. It's a really good way to not only gather kind of marketing material like photos and videos and other resources, also to raise some funds, and at the same time prove to the local businesses and to the local councillors who you invite down that all of these people want this to happen, and it excites everyone. You stand up on stage, you talk about your project, and it could be that you know, either way, you need to consider having some kind of midway event and perhaps even a launch party. The other element to consider is business pitching. So how do you actually get the businesses to pitch? We'll go into more detail in a minute. And communication. So in terms of your social media promotion, your offline promotion, like posters, flyers, how do you get all of that done? And last but not least, project management. So who is on your campaign team? How do you coordinate them? How do you actually keep a track of everything that's going on? So those are the sort of 4 things you need to think about. The first I just want to run through is this promotion. So lots of people think, oh, that, you know, if you don't, you know, you can be successful with a crowdfunding campaign if you just like post it once on Facebook and it'll get shared 1,000 times. It's not like that. You have to post lots and lots of times. We recommend about 5 times a day on Facebook and Twitter. You can use some social media scheduling tools. They're free and they're really easy. So this is Buffer. And you can basically just write all of your tweets one Sunday night and they'll just come out for you automatically at the times that people are most likely to be on those online, basically. So it's a really handy tool. And Canva lets you create nice visual graphics to help kind of promote your project. So here an example over here. So you've got an image and it's got some text over the top. So Canva basically lets you do that sort of thing very quickly and easily. You can also get posters and flyers on there, and make sure that you don't exclude the more traditional ways of promoting your project. So through newsletters and email groups, you might have your own newsletter, but try and get a small snippet out in someone else's newsletter. All you have to do is provide them with the content and they're likely to do that for you. Local press love to talk about crowdfunding stories, so just make sure you provide them with a nice quote, with some nice pictures, with a good story, and they'll be more than willing to put that out there, which will lead on to a national press story. So here are some examples of some tweets that people have sent out. So these are nice tweets. They say, keeping it interesting. So it's not just please pledge to our project, but they're actually giving you a little bit of history. So they've got some pictures here of this old barge that they wanted to transform into a puppet theatre. And they're saying, this is what it looked like in 2004. Please, can you help us? We need to keep this boat afloat. And over here, you've got a project creator that is publicly thanking someone. So that's a really nice way to make people feel like, oh, you know, they might even pledge again in the future if you give them that kind of public visibility and gratitude. And they're also tagging or handling the Londonist, which is a really widely read Twitter account. They're hoping for a retweet, and if they do get a retweet, that tweet will be seen by thousands of people. So make sure you do also handle other projects. And really importantly, both of these tweets have included the link to their project page. This should always be in there. And here are some Facebook posts. So we already mentioned this one, but this is a funny image. It catches your eye. It's a little boy in a ring, and it's got a funny little joke saying, "He can't splash out until you do." So this was a project to bring back a Lido, an outdoor swimming pool that was buried under this park back in the 80s. So there's a play on words. It's funny. There's a nice image. And they've done lots of hashtags as well, hashtag Peckham, hashtag Lido. And over here, you've got a group that were looking to save an old building from being turned into being redeveloped. And you know, they're down in London for the day, and so they've taken a funny picture with their bag just to sort of keep everyone in the loop. It's a day-to-day sort of thing. You just need to keep everyone constantly in the loop that activity is happening. And these are examples of some Spacehive updates. So on Spacehive, we've got a tool that allows you to basically email all of your backers, and it will also be posted. That email will be posted onto your project page for anyone who goes on there in the future can read any update that you've done. So these projects here, they've posted little updates on awards that they've won, on designs that have been drawn. They've also posted information that they've been in the press and linked through to the articles. So make sure you use the update tool regularly. These are the examples I was looking for. So these were created on Canva. Here, you've got the pledge £25 and receive a piece of pizza and a glass of wine at the launch event. And here, they've said that we have raised this much and we need just 6,000 more. There's a nice little pizza on there as well. So the next thing we were going to go through is how do you approach a business? Now, the trick here is to see this in two phases. So the first phase is warming up the businesses. So you don't want to go to a business straight away and say, give us your money. You want to approach them really early on, perhaps before you've even launched your campaign, and tell them about the project. So we are aware you're a local business in the area, and we really like what you do. We're doing this project and we wanted to get your opinion and see if you could give us any advice. Now, what that does is it works to make them feel like they're a part of the project. So they feel almost a sense of ownership or responsibility to the success. So that's warming them up. And then when you go back to them later on, you'll find it's much easier to actually ask them for money. And they'll feel like especially if you did listen to their advice, they'll feel obliged to actually contribute economically. What we do is we recommend that you create a sort of business pack. Now, this is an example. We've got it in a file that we can send you around. But it's a summary of your project. It's got a couple of images. It's got some quotes from other businesses that have already backed it. It's got a time limit, and it's got some call to action, very clear call to action on there. So this is just 2 pages that they can very quickly look through when you turn up at their office. And from that, they know exactly what they've got to do in order to support your project. So we recommend that you put something together like that for the businesses. In terms of offline events, which I mentioned earlier, these are some kind of key tips for what you should do before, during, and after those events. So make sure you set the dates for these pledge parties really far in advance. That means that every time someone pledges, they know, that potentially as a reward, they can turn up at this sponsored barbecue, or perhaps it's like a pillow fight in the city centre or whatever it might be. A theme always helps. So instead of just having a gathering, if you want to attract new audiences, so people that would be interested in the event as opposed to just the project, they might come along because it's a pillow fight. They might not necessarily be interested in your project itself. It's a good way to trick people into kind of widening your audience. So a theme helps. And free things. So if you can advertise that there will be a free beer for the first 100 people, that works well. During the event, make sure you take lots of photos and videos. This is collateral for your Twitter and Facebook account for months to come. And it really proves that people want it to happen. So make sure that you have that. You also want to have fun activities and lots of fun activities and facts for people to remember and go off and tell their friends after the event is over. And make sure you also have a pledging station, so a place where you've set up with a series of laptops where you actually just help people make their pledge there and then. And if they don't want to pledge online, a collection buckets, old school style. After the event, make sure you kind of monopolize on this event and almost make it bigger than it actually was in retrospect. So using the update tool, say this was a fantastic event. We had this many people, we raised this much money. Here are the pictures to prove it. And pledge any money that you raise towards your total funding target. So here are some events that Spacehive projects have run. So this was the Peckham Lido project. They actually went to the patch of land under which the swimming pool is buried, and they pretended to swim on the grass. So it was funny, it made the press because there was lots of people in bikinis splashing around in no water whatsoever. And over here you've got a kind of live music event that was to kind of showcase what this new community centre would be able to do if it had the refurbishment. Over here there was a sponsored scooter event, so these kids wanted to create a scooter park in their local area. So each kid paid £2 and they went down and had a little race. This is an adventure playground project. They said that the campaign was launching on Friday from 3 till 6. Come along and join us for cakes and hot drinks, a barbecue, crafts and other fun activities. So they're drawing you into an event that is, not just for taking your money, but it's also a fun day out. And this was a project that was using a games night as a fundraising opportunity. So Joe's asking, get people at the parties to register interest with something fun, a data capture, definitely. So it could be that, you want to enter them into a raffle, and it's a free raffle, but that way that you get to take their email addresses down to follow up with them afterwards. So make sure you do have some kind of event. And here we've got the last thing of the 4 things that we outlined. So it's project management. It's I'll just show you again here. So we've been through business pitching, we've been through events, we've been through communications, and this whole concept of project management. Very simply speaking, the point we want to make here is that you must keep an eye on the project itself. So running the campaign can take up all of your time, and it should take up all of your time. But if you're unable to deliver the project at the end of it because you were focusing too much on the campaign and not enough on, let's say, ordering the materials or advertising the festival in the local area enough, then it's all in vain. So make sure that you have your specific tasks. It could be that someone's actually solely responsible for booking the venues and all that sort of stuff, whereas the other person is responsible for asking businesses for money, someone else is in charge of the social media, someone else is in charge of finances. Make sure you identify what all of those tasks are and allocate tasks within your team. Brilliant. So from now on, you kind of have hopefully got a good feel for how to plan out your crowdfunding campaign. On Spacehive, we have lots of resources. We've got a wealth of FAQs. We've got lots of blog posts with extra tips. We've got an ultimate crowdfunding guide, which is 30 pages long, with lots of other tips in there. Hopefully this gave you a good sense of what a successful crowdfunding campaign entails. I'd just like to end by showing you a video of someone who hit their target, who worked very, very hard to get there. Whilst you're watching this video, I'd like you to just have a think about any final questions. Let's imagine that you've got one question that you really want to have answered by the end of this session. Then do just type it in that chat box, and once the video has finished, we will answer those. So here we go.
Oh wow! It's brilliant. So we're actually at delivery stage. Anonymous, James Parkinson. Thank you, Sadiq Khan, for kickstarting everything. It's amazing. It can be done. Oh, goodness gracious. It's called the Fruitful Juice Academy, and I hope to change the lives of 120 young people in the first 12 months, teaching them how to grow, create and sell their own produce. Through the Mayor's Civic Crowdfund campaign, I've become a part of a much bigger network of social entrepreneurs making massive changes in their communities. I think the benefits is working together to create one goal, to get to one goal. And I think the more people understand what it really is, more people should do it. I think it's needed right now. The best advice I could say is get the right support network, so you can discuss your idea and different ways of actually promoting and marketing, because it's very hard for one person to do it, so you really do need a support network, but don't give up. probably the support network that you've all created within Spacehive, to be honest with you. You know, so I've had a few people from the GLA really, you know, get me back in the box and get me straightened out. I think the skills that I have learnt is definitely marketing. So it might not look like that, it might look a bit chaotic at the moment, but my marketing skills has been, they've been tested. Action planning and actually writing proposals and business plan, and I've really become a better pitcher. So I'm able to pitch an idea and the idea much more fluently. Much more confident, and I probably believe and have much more faith in the own idea, in my own idea. Because I have a, you know, they call it hidden illness, chronic illness with the lymphedema. You question yourself and your ability to do other stuff, and maybe not. And the reason why I'm doing this is because not everyone's made for a 9-to-5 job. This is actually one of the biggest things I've ever actually done. I think now maybe more change makers need to stand up and get more active and grow some food, sell that food, make some money. Yeah, it's good. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. All these little people making juices and smoothies in aprons and their proper uniforms with workbooks. It's going to be really nice. Thank you everybody, thank you everybody, thank you everybody. Oh, my cheeks are hurting.
Excellent. So hopefully that gave you a good sense of what it feels like to actually go on and hit your crowdfunding target. Give you that motivations, give you that spur of energy to actually go out there and launch your campaigns. If you have got any questions, you can always call us or email us at support@spacehive.com, or talk to us on live chat, and we'll be willing to help in any way we can. You're not alone. This is it's difficult to do it for the first time, but lots of people have done it before you, and hopefully we'll be able to help you along the way. Thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.